This is a Tracking the Tropics update with the certified most accurate weather team at First Coast News.
Good evening, folks. I'm meteorologist Ross Mumal here with First Coast News. Kind of just giving you an update on what is kind of left of the remnants of Milton, now post-tropical Milton. So made landfall right near Siesta Key just after 8:30 last evening, and then continued to parallel the I-4 corridor straight across central Florida, moved offshore just around sunrise this morning, or really just before sunrise, and then is continuing to move quite quickly off to the east. Winds still sustained at about 70 miles per hour. So that is just below hurricane strength, moving east again at about 21 miles per hour. But nonetheless, we will soon be finished with Milton, although we are still seeing, or at least I should say maybe feeling, some of the impacts and conditions. Things still a little bit breezy out there, especially out at the beaches. So sustained winds for a lot of folks, anywhere from about 15 to 20, 23 miles per hour there in Mayport. But really it's the gusts that you need to be concerned about. We did have a wind advisory for the coastal waters up and down the First Coast, but really the only place that's still a little gusty is right on the beachhead. So Mayport, 35 mile per hour gust there, St. Augustine 30. So pretty much from Mayport down through St. Augustine, Ponte Vedra Beach, Flagler Beach, Palm Coast, still going to be feeling that here, at least for the remainder of this evening. Overnight, though, those winds going to taper down quite a lot. But because of the northeast flow that we've had, you combine that with the high tide, that tidal storm surge was a concern earlier this evening, and we are now past that point, besides for the folks in really eastern Putnam County. So anyone down near Palatka, Willaca, we'll still see the chance for the river waters in the St. Johns to rise at least a little bit here, up to about a 3-foot surge throughout the remainder of this evening. But we've also got a lot of just fresh water from the rain we saw yesterday feeding into a lot of our smaller creeks and streams that will all eventually get funneled into the St. Johns River, helping to keep those river levels quite high here, not only for a couple of days, but really for several weeks and potentially even up to a month. So quick look at what our rain totals were yesterday. Southern St. Johns County, Flagler County, picking up the majority or the heaviest amount of rain, anywhere from about 6 to 8 inches for most folks. But then you see super heavy stretch of rain there, anywhere really from about 8 upwards of 12, even 13 inches of rain locally from Orlando up through Sanford, Deltona, and even up towards Daytona Beach. So this is really where the St. Johns River begins to open up a little bit more. Again, that all still has to feed northward up the river. So every high tide cycle, we're still unfortunately going to see those higher waters. Now, likely not going to be as bad as what we saw here today. So it will gradually get lower and recede a little bit more and more each high tide cycle, especially because we finally have some drier air moving in. So you can see this is kind of just what's left of the moisture with Hurricane Milton, a lot of dry air behind it, some cooler temperatures as well, or overnight temperatures going to be down to near 60 degrees tonight, and even into this weekend then, upper 50s for a lot of us, which would be the first time we drop down into the upper 50s since May 12th back in the spring. So a little bit of a chilly cool down here, but overall, we finally got a great weekend ahead. I think we certainly deserve it. Mid-70s Saturday, a little bit warmer on Sunday, but we're going to have polar blue skies on Sunday, lots of sun, nice little warm afternoon, not too hot, not too breezy. Perfect weather, and really I know it's Heather Crawford's favorite weather as well. She's here with me tonight. She's going to bring some questions in from some of our viewers, or really just what some folks have been asking here for the last couple of hours, Heather.
Yeah, Ross, excellent job forecasting and covering Tracking Milton. We are so glad it is now out of here. The number one question, Ross, that we're getting today is about this graphic that a lot of people have seen. It's been all over social media, this viral picture of what is purportedly Nadine heading straight toward Florida. And we debunk that. That is not accurate. That is not a real picture. Someone took an old hurricane tracker and slapped Nadine on it. But people want to know, is there another system out there? What can you tell us about what could potentially become Nadine?
So right now, no, we don't have any system like that headed towards Florida. As you said, we debunked that. There's not a Nadine headed towards us, at least for the time being. Now, we do still have Tropical Storm Leslie off out into the Atlantic Ocean. That storm is going to recurve up into the North Atlantic. And then the National Hurricane Center is also watching one area of possible development just off the coast of West Africa. Very low chance of formation, only about a 20% chance. And it may move westward, but we are not concerned about that, even if it does form. Now, Any long-range model that you look at, 7, 10, even 14 days out, many of them will try to depict some type of tropical formation, whether it's in the Gulf or if it's in the Western Caribbean. Why is that? Well, the waters are still super warm there. This is that time of year where the water's not only warm, but we still have some cyclonic rotation aloft or high pressure aloft, which allows those storms to grow vertically in size and in strength. So that area is still conducive for tropical storm or tropical cyclone development throughout this time of the year. Again, we still have about 50 days left in the Atlantic hurricane season. So we're certainly not done yet. Could something form maybe by the end of next week? Yes, some models are showing it could happen, but more than 7 days out, so many factors could change between now and then. We're not all that concerned that anything will form. Again, the National Hurricane Center, at least for the next 7 days, is not expecting any kind of formation either in the Gulf or in the Caribbean. And even if something did happen to form, maybe let's say 10 days out, there's also no guarantee it would head towards Florida either. And we've already had 3 storms here this summer and fall, Heather. So I don't think we need another one. Let's send it a different way.
Yeah, we sure are going to hope and pray it does not come near Florida. But like you said, hurricane season doesn't end until the end of November. And I mean, if there's one thing that we can say about Helene and now Milton is that people are really starting to take these storms seriously. But the good thing is with hurricanes is that you get several days advance notice. One of the things you don't get a lot of advance notice with is tornadoes. And we've had a lot of questions about just the sheer amount of tornadoes we saw spawned yesterday as Milton made its way across the Florida peninsula. Talk about why we saw so many tornadoes, and is that unusual to see so many with a hurricane like Milton?
It's not unusual to see at least some. I think how many the folks in Central and South Florida did see was certainly surprising. Definitely a tornado outbreak down there. As Milton came on shore, the southern half of the peninsula was in that right front quadrant of the storm. That's typically where you have the best wind shear, lower at the surface. You have winds feeding in off the ocean and then moving from south to north. So you have some rotation at the surface that allowed for some of those supercells to spawn as Milton kind of began to move on shore. At one time, there was 15 simultaneous tornado warnings, which, I mean, I worked in Tornado Alley in Oklahoma, and I think at maybe most we had 5 or 6 tornado warnings happening at one time. So to have 15 at once, I don't want to say it's unprecedented, but that's just a crazy amount to all be happening at once. And I think in total, they had over 30 warnings throughout the day, if not more than that. So yeah, kind of a scary thing for those folks down there.
Yeah, that is crazy. Well, we want to keep answering questions. So if you have a question for us, you can comment in the First Coast News Facebook page, on our Weather Watchers page, or on this YouTube feed. Right now, we're going to be asking Ross those questions. And Ross, I know you and the whole weather team have been watching really closely the tides. You're watching closely high tides. And Beth Mangus asked on Facebook, is the St. Johns River still in danger of surge in Fleming Island? She says water keeps creeping into her daughter's backyard and she's right in the water. So what do we need to know about that and specifically where she is?
Yeah, so each high tide cycle, you will have that chance for the water to rise back up potentially into your backyard, especially as the rainfall that we saw further south, so down towards Orlando, that's all still got to feed into the St. Johns River. And that's going to take a little bit of time, a day or two, for all of that fresh water to feed through those streams and those creeks, get into the St. Johns, and then head northward up the river towards Fleming Island. So with that being said, yes, the river is going to continue to be high. The only good news, really, I guess, is that the northeast flow that we've had pretty much locked in here for the last several days, that is going to begin to weaken and taper off. So that will allow the water to kind of be expelled out of the St. Johns River and then out into the Atlantic Ocean. The problem with what we saw today was the northeast flow really just kind of acted as a stopper at the mouth of the river, almost like, you know, a cork on a wine bottle couldn't allow the liquid out. Now we're going to take that cork off. It should be able to, you know, flow freely, so to speak. So high tide, I believe, for Fleming Island will be right around like 5 to 6 p.m. tomorrow evening. I might have to double check that, but it'll be around dinner time tomorrow night, and a similar story in the morning as well. So yes, you're still going to see the water levels remain high, but the worst of it has now passed us. the storm surge warning, that has been expired from the National Weather Service and Hurricane Center. So it'll be high, but it should not be coming into your home, which I think is what everyone wants to make sure doesn't happen.
Absolutely. And on the front page of firstcoastnews.com, I posted on my Facebook page today too, we do have that article and it shows all of the high tides for today and tomorrow if anybody wants to check that out. Harold Winery asked a really good question. He was watching last night and he wants to know, when does a storm actually achieve landfall? He said last night it looked like, Milton was big. It was a Cat 3 when it made landfall around 8:30 last night in Siesta Key in Sarasota County. And he said it looked like it had come ashore, but they kept saying expected to make landfall. Talk about when it actually is considered to have made landfall.
Yeah, so a lot of folks think when that outer eye wall actually, moves on shore, that's when it is officially making landfall. That is not actually the case. You need to have that center of circulation within the eye cross on shore, which can sometimes be 15, 20, 30 miles away from that eye wall itself. With the dry air and the wind shear getting pulled in on the back side of the system, that eye really began to expand fairly significantly as it began to move towards Sarasota County and the Siesta Key area. So it took actually a little bit longer for it to officially make landfall, but it's always going to be the center of the circulation where that lowest pressure is located within the hurricane's eye. Once that moves on shore, then it has officially made landfall. So it's not when the eye wall moves on, it's when the center of the eye gets on land.
Okay, that is good information to know. Several people are asking about wind speeds. We saw some high wind speeds here on the First Coast, but when it actually moved into St. Johns County, because this storm actually passed us, it wasn't 100 miles south of St. Johns County when Milton moved by.
About 130.
Yeah, so it was a good distance away. Was it actually a hurricane? Did we feel hurricane impacts here on the First Coast, or was it a tropical storm by the time we felt it here on the First Coast?
No, so it was still a Category 1 storm as it moved just south of the First Coast. I do have a list of some of the wind gusts here. So you mentioned St. Johns County, a 70-mile-per-hour wind gust reported in St. Augustine. Just south of there, down towards Daytona Beach, they received a 76-mile-per-hour gust. I might have to confirm this, but upwards of about an 82-mile-per-hour wind gust there as well. Ponce Inlet, also around the Daytona Beach area, potentially a 90-mile-per-hour wind gust. And then just inland, Palaca 50, NAS Jax upwards of about 49 to 50. The south side of Jacksonville, right around 50 to 55 miles per hour. So most of those, at least for kind of the Jacksonville metro, so northern St. John's and Duval County itself, we really only experienced those tropical storm force winds. That's why we were only in a tropical storm warning late last evening. But for southern St. Johns County and especially down into Flagler County, where we saw those wind gusts over 70, upwards of 80 to 90, those are hurricane force wind gusts. So yes, certainly hurricane conditions were felt for those in the southeastern quadrant of the First Coast here.
Okay, Jean Baker has a question, and Ross, I don't know if you'll know this answer, but she asked about what the city of Jacksonville deployed last night, that those tubes, those orange tubes, they're known as a tiger dam, and they basically blow up big so that they can protect the water from coming over and protect the dunes. We saw them deployed. Our reporter Zach Wilcox was in Neptune Beach, and we saw them putting those out. No water breached that area, did they? Did the tiger dams work? I think they did, right?
Yeah, they worked. I'm not 100% sure if the water even got up that high.
Right.
In Duval County, they've done a great job with the beach restoration and bringing more sand on shore, building up those dunes a little bit. So yeah, those tiger dams are definitely a great tool and used to help the storm surge come up the beach. But at least in Duval and like you said at Neptune Beach, I'm not even sure if the water got close enough to hit the dams themselves.
Yeah, well, they're fascinating. I've heard Governor DeSantis talk a lot about these flood technologies being deployed. So I want to research that some more and look and exactly find out how they work and what they're doing. But I don't recall another hurricane here on the First Coast I've covered where they've used these tiger dams. So more to come on that. But great question, Jean. And Ross, thank you for answering that. A lot of you have asked, what can you do to help? I heard one gentleman in St. Augustine say it felt like we missed a bullet. And here on the First Coast, while we did see some flooding, some damage, overall, we really were spared. But our friends down in the Tampa area, St. Pete area, really got hit hard. And so we want to let you all know that First Coast News has teamed up with iHeartRadio. And so if you want to donate to help those hit on the west coast of Florida, really hard by Milton. We are going to be having a donation drive at the Markets at Town Center from 6 a.m. till 7 p.m. next Monday and Tuesday. So we're collecting all new items. I got a list right here, Ross. They can bring out things like water bottles, water jugs, any non-perishable food items, especially need baby food. They need paper towels and plates and cups, cell phone chargers, that's another big item, and then all kinds of personal hygiene items like first aid kits, hand sanitizer, soap, shampoo, and then pet food items, pet items like dog food, cat food, pet carriers, leash, anything that you can think of, because a lot of those people really lost a lot of their belongings. And so we're going to be out there. Hurricane Milton Storm Aid Supply Collection for Recovery, new items only, being collected next Monday and Tuesday at the Markets at Town Center in Jacksonville from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. So if you want to help, we can really use your donations, and those will be driven down to the areas hardest hit. Ross, just one more question for you. We talked a lot about storm surge, specifically down where Milton was going to make landfall. There was significant storm surge, but it wasn't quite as high as what some estimates were initially projecting, right?
Yeah, so to speak. For the Tampa Bay area, certainly, because it made landfall just to the south of Tampa, they actually got offshore winds. So the water, if you looked in Old Tampa Bay, was actually getting pulled out of the bay as Milton made landfall. Then as it moved on shore, the water surged back up in. But the Sarasota area, Siesta Key, they did experience that storm surge. I've seen videos. The sand just pulled all the way up, not only across, the beachhead, but well into some of these coastal beach towns. So yeah, thankfully it was not as bad as projected. They could have seen 10 to 15 feet. The storm surge was not that, but still, catastrophic for some of those neighborhoods over there on the Gulf Coast.
And any final thoughts for our friends here on the First Coast, still dealing with flooding, still watching the water rise when high tide comes?
Yeah, just watch it closely. Watch when high and low tide are going to be if you live near an estuary, the intercoastal, or, the Trout River, the St. Johns River, Egan's Creek up in Nassau County as well. It will gradually improve, especially because we're finally going to get some drier weather. Yeah. This weekend, no rain. Most of next week, at least up until Tuesday, no rain is expected, maybe a few showers by the middle of the week. But we're finally going to get calmer weather, drier skies. So if you do have cleanup that you have to do, you don't have to worry about the weather hindering you from getting out there and doing any of that.
That is some good news to end on. Ross, thank you so much, and we invite you to join us tonight for First Coast News at 11. We still have our crew spread out all across the First Coast looking at the flooding that we've seen today and the damage that we've seen. And so if you have any more questions, we'll continue to be doing these on YouTube and on First Coast News Plus. Feel free to comment in the chat below on our Facebook page. Join the First Coast News Weather Watchers page. Follow our YouTube channel, and you can count on us. We're on your side. We'll stick with you through it all. We're still in hurricane season, as Ross said. Yes. Hopefully, we will not have any more hurricanes this season, but we will keep you posted on whatever we see out there. Ross, thank you and the whole weather team for all that you're doing to keep everyone informed and safe, and we will see you tonight on First Coast News at 11.